You're watching The Hard Facts, brought to you straight from the CNN News 18 Federal Bank Primetime Studio. Viewers, for a while now, the West has been accusing Prime Minister Modi for being an indifferent bystander on the war in Europe. Today, the West should have zero complaints. In his meeting with President Zelensky, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made it clear that India had not been, quote, neutral or an indifferent bystander, unquote, during the Russia-Ukraine war, but was and is always on the side of peace. Prime Minister Modi reiterated that the conflict can be resolved only through dialogue and diplomacy. He added that New Delhi is ready to make proactive contributions towards efforts for peace. Listen as the Prime Minister addressed Zelensky in the full glare of the press, viewers.
एक्सेलेंसी, आप भी भली बात जानते हैं और पूरा विश्व भी जानता है कि युद्ध के समय हमने दो प्रकार की भूमिकाओं का रास्ता अपनाया और उस भूमिका को निभाने का हमने भरपूर प्रयास किया है। हमारी पहली भूमिका रही है मानवीय दृष्टिकोण की। ऐसे संकट की घड़ी में बहुत सारी रिक्वायरमेंट रहती है, जिन रिक्वायरमेंट को पूरा करने के लिए भारत ने हो सका उतना एक मानवीय दृष्टिकोण को केंद्र में रखते हुए पूरा करने का प्रयास किया है। और मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि मानवीय दृष्टिकोण से भी जिस प्रकार की मदद की आवश्यकता होगी, भारत हमेशा हमेशा आपके साथ खड़ा रहेगा और दो कदम आगे चलेगा। एक्सेलेंसी, हमने जो दूसरा मार्ग चुना वो दूसरा मार्ग है युद्ध से दूर रहने का। हम बहुत ही कन्विक्शन के साथ युद्ध से दूर रहे हैं, लेकिन इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि हम तटस्थ थे, हम न्यूट्रल नहीं थे। हम पहले दिन से ही पक्षकार रहे हैं और हमारा पक्ष है शांति का। हम बुद्ध की धरती से आते हैं जहां युद्ध को कोई स्थान नहीं होता है। हम महात्मा गांधी की धरती से आते हैं जिसने पूरे विश्व को शांति का संदेश दिया है। एक्सेलेंसी, मैं आज जब यूक्रेन आया हूं तब मैं 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की भावना को लेकर के आया और 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की भावना मानवता से प्रेरित है और मैं आज यूक्रेन की धरती पर शांति का संदेश लेकर के आया। एक्सेलेंसी, यहां से पहले मैंने ग्लोबल साउथ की एक कॉन्फ्रेंस की, करीब 120 देश के लोग थे। मैं उनकी तरफ से भी शांति का संदेश लेकर के आया।
Later, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar revealed that discussions between Prime Minister Modi and President Zelensky were mostly with regard to the war in Ukraine, with the Prime Minister calling for, quote, practical engagement between all stakeholders to develop innovative solutions that will contribute towards peace, unquote. Now, viewers, this message from the Prime Minister is not very different from his advice to President Putin when he met him in Moscow in July. Listen into that.
मानवता में विश्वास करने वाला हर व्यक्ति जब जानहानि होती है तब बहुत पीड़ित होता है, लेकिन उसमें भी जब मासूम बच्चों की कत्ल होती है, मासूम बच्चों को मरते हुए देखते हैं, तब हृदय छलनी हो जाता है और वो दर्द बहुत भयानक होता है। बम, बंदूक और गोलियों के बीच समाधान और शांति वार्ताएं सफल नहीं होती हैं और हमने वार्ता के माध्यम से ही शांति के रास्ते अपनाने होंगे।
Now, purely looking at this from the prism of optics, symbolism, the Prime Minister's words have not just allowed India to claim the moral high ground, but have also now firmly placed the onus on the belligerents. The West backed Ukraine and Russia to get back to the talks table. Both these sides, in particular the West, will not be able to guilt India or other global South players for, as they claim, quote, being part of the problem and not part of the solution, unquote. Let's deep dive this meeting, viewers. Let's speak to some of our panelists, some of our acclaimed guests, to get really a sense of what is transpired and whether India can actually be a credible negotiator to bring these two warring sides together. Let's go straight across to our guests. Let's bring in Mr. Kanwal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary of India. We're also going to be joined by Alyona Shkrum, who is a Ukrainian Member of Parliament, and there's Dr. Anand Ranganathan there also with us. Mr. Sibal, this is an important moment. It's an important moment because in Ukraine right now, the war has actually escalated, as you know. And if India was actually planning to go there and broker peace, that task, if it were setting that task for itself to execute, would have been a lot more difficult as things stand today. I'm sure that the Indian government understands this. So why really did the Prime Minister go to Ukraine?
Well, I think there has been a feeling all along promoted by the West that India was actually, even by being neutral, so-called, was much closer to the Russian position on this conflict than to the Ukrainian one. And we have been criticized a great deal. He has been criticized a great deal for this, and the moral outrage, fake moral outrage, when Modi embraced Putin in Moscow when he went there last time, was evidence of this, that India is not siding with the West on this, that India is actually fueling the capacity of Russia to conduct this war against Ukraine, etc., etc. Now, I think Prime Minister Modi decided that the time had come when he had to diffuse this criticism and these attacks by also making a gesture towards Ukraine. Now, the point is that we may have our own view with regard to the origin of the war, who's been responsible for it, what are the circumstances that led to it. And there's a huge, huge responsibility of the West in provoking this crisis. But all said and done, Ukraine is not our enemy. We have diplomatic relations with that country, and traditionally we've had friendly ties with that country, especially when it was part of the Soviet Union. And therefore, to eliminate this kind of propaganda against us, that somehow we were anti-Ukraine, I think the Prime Minister's decision to visit was opportune. However, Zelensky and his government, to my mind, undermined the purpose of his visit by launching this operation in Kursk. This is the first time after the Second World War, when Nazi Germany invaded Russia or the Soviet Union, the Russian territory has been directly attacked on land. This is very, very significant. And the emotional repercussions of this on Moscow should not be underestimated. Now, if Prime Minister went there with the idea of promoting peace, then I think to that extent, the Ukrainian decision was not helpful. But to come back to what you said, I don't think the idea of the Prime Minister is to broker peace. Because brokering peace cannot be done simply between Ukraine and Russia. After all, if Ukraine is totally supported by the United States and the West, then the actors and players in this go beyond Ukraine. And if India has to get into this brokering the peace game, then it has to have on board other players and talk to them, which is a very, very complex and difficult exercise, and which will not lead us anywhere. So I think the Prime Minister is right in positioning India and himself on the side of peace, to be able to say that, look, we want peace, we want to promote peace. If you want our help in any way, we are willing to give it. If you want some messages to be conveyed, we can convey them. It can be behind the scenes, it can be in front of the scenes, whatever, positioning ourselves globally as a messenger of peace. And also, by taking the leadership of the global South, India has widened the base of its appeal to Ukraine, or even to Russia, that Modi is conveying not only the sentiment of India, but the global South in general, which is suffering from this conflict. But the long and short is, there's nothing much that India can do apart from exhortation, apart from creating a general atmosphere in the world that India is trying its best to see if something can be done, some innovative solution, as you pointed out, and that's in the joint statement, some innovative solution can be found to resolve this conflict. So in a diplomatic sense, it's a win-win. There is no particular downside to this. But if we are looking for results and breakthroughs, then I think we shouldn't hype it up. And finally, Modi actually not only embraced Zelensky, embraced him twice, put his hand on his shoulder, held his hand when they were going to this Martyrologist Exhibition. So I think he has certainly helped to diffuse, as I said, this absolutely invalid and fake criticism about Modi embracing Putin.
Let me bring in the Ukrainian member of parliament. Thank you for joining us. I know these are troubled times in Ukraine right now, and of course the war has escalated. I want to ask you, Mishkram, do you believe that the very fact that Mr. Zelensky criticized Mr. Modi for going across and embracing Putin a month and a half back, the very fact that today President Zelensky met him and in a sense rolled out the red carpet, that Mr. Zelensky himself realizes that in international diplomacy, it is interests that are permanent, not so much friendships. Would you agree?
Hello from Kyiv, from the capital of Ukraine.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, first of all, we are very honored to have Prime Minister Modi today in Kyiv. And believe me, it is not calm, it is not secure, it is quite dangerous to be right now in Kyiv. We were supposed to have the meeting of the parliament where Prime Minister Modi was about to speak, and we had to cancel his going to the parliament because it would be very dangerous, and we received information that Russia could target the parliament building at the time when Prime Minister is there. So just so you understand, it is not calm. And you have to be a brave man to come to Kyiv and Ukraine in the middle of the war, and to come publicly with hands open and with embracing peace and President Zelensky and Ukrainian people. So thank you so much for that. Believe us, Ukrainian people appreciate, know, and feel incredible amount of support from you. As to your question, well, you have to understand that we are in the middle of the war. It is very emotional. And we can criticize our friends. It doesn't mean that they are not our friends. And we hope that our friends understand our emotions and sometimes the criticism, but it doesn't mean that we don't rely on their support. When Prime Minister Modi went to Moscow to see Putin, it was the day when the biggest children's hospital in Ukraine was bombed by Russian missiles. And everybody was so in shock. Even after 2.5 years of war, it was shocking. So I have a 7-month-old baby, and I was supposed to be in that hospital because it is the biggest, most modern hospital on the day when this happened for my child, to receive care. And thanks God that I wasn't there with my 7-month-old baby, but thousands of other mothers were. And that was the day when Modi went to Putin. So it was a horrible emotional thing, but it doesn't mean that Modi is not our friend and that Indian people are not our friends, because you are. You have supported the independence of Ukraine and territorial integrity from the beginning. India knows what it is, how hard it is to keep territorial integrity and independence. And India went through horrible times in its history. And you know very well what it is when another country tries to govern you, when another country doesn't consider you to be a country, when another country wants you to be a part of their empire. This is what Russia wants for us today. So I think that the fact that Modi is in Kyiv, it's incredibly important. And Modi also said today that he is looking for peace, of course, as we all are, but justice for Ukraine as well in terms of territorial integrity of our country. The last thing I want to add, if you allow me, is that it's a difficult times, and Putin tries to portray this war as the war of the global South against the Western world. This is not true. And Modi represents also for us the leader of the global South, the leader of the region, but also the leader of so-called global South, so non-Western countries. And it is not their war, but they are affected by this war, incredibly affected because of the grain that is not being exported because of Russia, because of the humanitarian catastrophe, because of the ecology that is declining in the region. So this is not the war of the global South against the West. This is the war of one President Putin, dictator, who wants to govern Ukraine. And of course, global South needs, to help us to stop it.
Well, Ms. Krum, it was interesting that you sort of framed your response, specifically your criticism of Putin, through an imperialist lens. Now,
this is how we feel.
Yes, no, that's true. I mean, that is your view completely. Now, you see, China's expansionism in its sphere of influence, which is in our part of the world, in Asia, is at par with Russia's neo-imperial, designs in what it thinks is its backyard in Eastern Europe. Now, China has routinely trespassed in both the subcontinent and South China Sea. Yet, its flagrant violations of international law, both on land and at sea, have never moved the West. Some of your backers, NATO, America, etc., to, let's say, impose crippling economic sanctions on China. No, India requires that kind of help sometimes, and it doesn't seem to be coming. So while people expect a lot from Prime Minister Modi, and you are thankful that Prime Minister Modi has come here, we are constantly really at a state of war around the LAC with China. As you know, we've also fought a war with China, perhaps one of the very few countries that have actually gone to war with China in the recent past. So what do you make of this? Because India feels very let down. We don't see anyone jumping to come out here and say that, look, sanctions must be imposed on China and we are imposing economic sanctions to help India, and this, that, the other. That doesn't happen. And it's not just India, as you know. The Philippines are having a problem. Vietnamese are having a problem. You know what's happening. The Japanese, and the Taiwanese.
I came back from Vietnam a little bit less than 9 months ago. So yes, I know what is happening in the region. And I understand your emotions completely. As we felt let down when not a lot of countries wanted to help us in the first time of Russian invasion, as I understand, you felt let down for much longer. And it doesn't mean that, it is right. Right now, we have very difficult relationship with China, and I think that you know that too. For me, India is, as the world's biggest democracy, is a leader in the region. And for me, India is showing, how it is supposed to be a leader in the region. Sometimes it feels like you are a little bit neutral, but it's not that you are neutral. It's just that you know what it is like to preserve the territorial integrity against a very, very difficult neighbor who constantly tries the boundaries of your democracy and of your territory. And of course, in this way, Ukraine knows what you're going for. Well, if we can promise you that we will influence other countries, the United States has
let me tell you,
a lot of sanctions.
Ms. Krum, while I really value your input, and we have great ties with Ukraine, there is one belligerent to our west that is actually in occupation of Indian territory, POK, and that is Pakistan. And Ukraine has not always helped in the United Nations, for example, to vote alongside India. So, there are these issues. While you are looking to India today to help you out, India has been in serious strife with Pakistan, 3 wars, And we really haven't. Anyhow, that's all history. Let me just quickly also bring in Dr. Anand Ranganathan and Mr. Vinay Chothaiwale. Both of them are here with us. They're also important opinion makers in our country. Dr. Ranganathan, how do you view this conversation that has taken place between the Prime Minister and also the expectation of the West of India in general?
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to my fellow panelists. I speak out here strictly as a layman to learn things, because we have an exalted panelist, Mr. Sibal, among the panel, and talking foreign policy in front of him is like taking coal to Dhanbad. So that's the caveat there. But, I think Mr. Modi now is officially the only world leader to have given a bear hug to Mr. Zelensky as well as to Mr. Putin right in the middle of a war. I think India, for the first time, is walking that thin line. Some may call it being neutral, but that is how strong nations have traditionally been. Good thing is India is not crawling on the thin line. It is standing up and walking. And it is exposing in doing so the hypocrisy which is on display of the rest of the world, which is just astonishing. And you touched on it a little bit. Let me expand on that. Has the West or Ukraine, with which I have tremendous sympathy, and one of the panelists is a Ukrainian there, in solidarity with you, ma'am. But has the West or Ukraine or any of the 50-odd Islamic nations put sanctions on China for interning 1.5 million Muslims in concentration camps and forcibly sterilizing them and feeding them pork? Have any activists asked for China to be blacklisted because it never apologized for Tiananmen Square massacre that murdered 10,000 innocents? Have we castigated Ukraine for siding with Pakistan in United Nations resolutions? Manmohan Singh called India George Bush's greatest friend, even as he was bombing and killing Muslims in the Middle East, because we wanted the nuclear deal. And Europe, that 2 years into the Russian invasion of Ukraine, continues to buy 13 million metric tons of coal, 43 billion cubic meters of gas, and 17.5 million metric tons of oil from Russia. He's now lecturing India on morality and ethics. Germany right now is buying Russian fuel from Belgium and Holland. Europe is buying refined Russian fuel from Jamnagar, India. And what to say about the Americans? You were importing 9% of your crude from Russia well beyond the Ukraine invasion. You sat on your bum when China violated the LAC in 2020. It was Russia, erstwhile Soviet Union, that helped us in 1971 when you sided with Pak. And as for the so-called armchair holier-than-thou activists both in the West and out here, when Russia attacks Ukraine, ban ordinary Russians from football tournaments and sporting and singing contests. But when Pakistan attacks India, kills our Jawans, launches terror attack on our parliament, hey, come on, be sensible. Allow ordinary Pakistanis to play cricket and act in Indian films. So these turnips can stuff their hypocrisy in their hookah and smoke it. Look, the Ukraine war apart, Rahul, for which I condemn Russia. Why should India be singled out for looking after its interests? Cheap oil and gas from Russia has allowed us to keep our inflation in check. It is the lowest in 5 years, 3.5%. The same inflation that had it gone up, the opposition would have cried out for keeping it in check by buying cheap Russian oil and gas. There are many experts here who would elaborate in detail about the various domains in which we enjoy excellent relations with Russia, with our bilateral trade now more than $70 billion. There's oil and gas, there's economic partnership, and there's excellent defense partnership, S-400, AK-203, BrahMos, etc. But let me concentrate on one aspect that is often ignored. I think the time has come, Rahul, for us to realize that we are what we are and what we are going to be because of hard power and not soft power. Doubtless, it is great whenever India gets recognized as a soft power, dance, music, culture, knowledge, math, religions. No one has gifted more to the world than India. But it is also a fact that soft power goes hand in hand with hard power. You know which country is ranked first in Portland Soft Power Index? A country that is only 200 years old, USA. Yes. And yet it is number one soft power. Fact is, India was a soft power center, but it was also a hard power center. Once it was colonized, subjugated, its soft power reached, also collapsed. Little changed after independence. India has forever had a shambolic foreign policy, because of which we have always been made to sit on a rickety stool adjacent to the big table. Just 30 seconds. Rahul, we must now drag a chair and sit alongside the powers that are. We are finally seeing the face of new India. It has taken 10 years for the Modi dispensation to stand up to Western bullying and to expose their hypocrisy and stand by our friends. Bottom line is, Russia is a trusted friend. And talking of friends, just 10 seconds. What is it the old rogue Kissinger said? To have America as an enemy is dangerous, but to have America as a friend is fatal.
Well, look, at least the Prime Minister has very clearly said that we're not neutral, we're on the side of peace and humanity and peaceful resolution. This is a very important message, Mr. Chotaiwale. What do you make of this constant sort of narrative that the Prime Minister went to Kyiv basically to do a balancing act? I don't see it that way, but what are your comments?
Rahul, this visit of Prime Minister Modi to Ukraine is unique in many aspects. It may be his shortest visit to any country in last 10 years. And also, as Anand has said, in a gap of few weeks, he has visited Russia as well as now he has visited Ukraine. In both the ways, Prime Minister Modi has said that we have given up the Cold War era pick up no fight, pick up no friends policy of non-alignment, where we were neutral out of fear, not because of any conviction or any virtues.
Right.
Now what we are doing is essentially we are engaging in all the actors of the world and putting our national self-interest at the top, and therefore there is no surprise that we bought cheap Russian oil, but at the same time we sold it after refinement to many parts of Europe, and Europe didn't have any objection about it because they were also equally in need of oil. So we have benefited ourselves, we have benefited our industry, and we have protected our national interest by this subtle balancing of the policy during Russia-Ukraine war. Now few people are definitely upset because we are taking advantage of it, and there is no we should not be shy about it, because that is the way the policy should work, and national self-interest should remain at the top of the mind. So what Prime Minister Modi even yesterday in Poland in front of diaspora, what he has said, that we will not remain silent, we will not remain aloof, but we will join the hands with our friends to bring the peace and prosperity, and he used the word Vishwabandhu,
yes,
which means friend of the world.
Yes.
And that is the way India's foreign policy go, and this visit both to Russia as well as to Ukraine should be seen in that context.
Okay, two last comments, one from Ms. Shkram and one of course from Mr. Sibal. Ms. Shkram, what do you make now of some of the comments that you've heard? Will, for example, now that the Prime Minister has said, and he also said exactly what he said to Mr. Zelensky, to Mr. Putin, come, sit down, negotiate, break the deadlock, sue for peace. Will both these sides now listen to the Prime Minister?
We understand that the war will end in negotiations anyway. It will end with a peace treaty. The problem is that we've had already these peace treaties in 2014, in 2015. It was called the Minsk Agreement, and Putin didn't comply with any of it and later on invaded the country. So obviously we don't trust Putin, and we need other countries to at least guarantee for us that Putin will stick to any agreement. And here where India or United States or other countries can come into play. And believe me, nobody here is trying to lecture India or any other country, certainly not Ukraine, because we've had our big disappointments with the West. West guaranteed our independence when we gave up the nuclear weapons, because Ukraine gave up the nuclear weapons when we became independent on the guarantee of UK, United States, France and other countries that nobody would touch our borders and nobody would invade us. And they failed, and they are not providing these guarantees. So we are not thinking that the Western world is perfect. We have our doubts and our conversations with them, which are very difficult. But what we have in common with you and with the Global South is that what world do we want to live in 10 or 15 years? If Russia wins this invasion, if Russia, after killing thousands of children, after torturing people, after raping Ukrainian women, after just annexing the territories, after hitting hospitals, if China actually, or if Russia, actually wins this war, what China will do, or what will North Korea do next?
Sure.
It will be a signal for any dictator and any wannabe empire to invade other countries.
Okay.
This is not what we want together.
Mr. Sibal, how will this end? Who will put an end to it? I mean, let's not kid ourselves. There are other people who are perhaps delighting in the fact that Ukraine is stuck in this horrible state that it is in, because there is a greater conflict that is playing out. There is a greater strategy to contain Russia, which Russia has a problem with. You know the Rimland thesis,
Well, the Americans have made no bones about what their intentions are. They have said publicly on many occasions their goal is the strategic defeat of Russia, isolation of Russia diplomatically, the collapse of the Russian economy, and terrible sanctions have been imposed on Russia. Now, these goals have not been met.
Yes.
But these are the declared goals. And it is becoming clearer and clearer that the war is not merely between Ukraine and Russia. The war is between US, NATO, and Russia, with Ukraine as an instrument. Because if the United States and Europe, they want a peaceful solution or negotiation, they could do that. They have channels of communication, they can use them. And it's not as if negotiations haven't occurred. They occurred in Belarus, they occurred in Istanbul. But some kind of agreement was agreed, was initialed. But nevertheless, nothing has happened, and the war has actually begun to expand. So, frankly, the MP from Ukraine, she's very emotional, but a lot of propaganda in what she said, frankly. And if this is the attitude that the Ukrainians have of sheer propaganda in order to try and move public opinion, then you're not going to go very far. I don't know how much of a decision maker she is, but if this is the kind of unrealistic reading of the situation on the ground, is the mainstream logic in Ukraine, then it'll be very difficult to find a solution. In fact, if Ukraine, which is so utterly dependent on arms and financial aid from the West, were actually to be denied this, then the conditions for a negotiated settlement can be reached. And finally, this talk about, you see, you can't have it both ways. On the one hand, you say Russia has been weakened, 80% of its war material from the Soviet days has been destroyed, that Putin is challenged from within, he's not fully in control of his armed forces, etc., etc. On the other hand, you say, look, if he wins there, then he's going to march into West Europe.
Okay.
You must decide what is what.
Yes.
But I'll end with saying that Prime Minister has done well in order to approach Ukraine, engage Ukraine, and therefore widen the base of his diplomacy.
That's right. I think also, it allows him more elbow room. It also allows him to tell people, all those who have been his critics, that India is not neutral. We're actually taking sides. We're just taking the side of peace, and we want you people now to take onus of the process rather than constantly whinging about the circumstances. Well, viewers, New Delhi has put out in its own way, strategic, autonomous way, that we have a defined position. It's up to the world now to accept it, take it, or leave it. Viewers, let's move on, because there is a very important story that is brewing underfoot in a very, very troubled geography, viewers. Congress has allied with the Abdullah-led National Conference for the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly elections. The alliance was firmed up yesterday, but what is not known is that the National Conference has made certain pledges in its manifesto that, quite frankly, echo Pakistan's line on certain key issues. I said it is not known, not because the National Conference has hid it or anything. It's just that no one has really focused on it, even in the media, which I find quite astounding. So here we are making a beginning. Now, for instance, one of the key promises that the manifesto, the National Conference manifesto makes, is that it pledges in its manifesto that its fight to restore Article 370 as enshrined in the Constitution continues alongside the reinstatement of Article 35A. The manifesto also says, we as in the National Conference will also strive to reinstate the state constitution, the state flag, preserving our dignity, identity and heritage, unquote. There are other pledges too. Some of them appear to undermine India's national interest, and I've put them all out for you viewers. We'll pull them up on the screen. As I said, we strive to restore Articles 370, 35A and statehood as prior to August 5, 2019. Then it goes on to say, encourage dialogue between India and Pakistan and make efforts to secure the release of prisoners languishing in jails. Earlier, viewers, a caveat was introduced, political prisoners. Now, viewers, that caveat seems to be missing. In pursuit of lasting peace, we'll strive to revive LOC trade and explore possibilities for opening additional routes, unquote. Goes on to say, we will also strive to reinstate the state constitution, state flag, unquote. Now, viewers, reinstating the state constitution, the state flag takes you all the way back, almost to pre-1953 situation, viewers. The BJP has attacked the Congress and has called upon it to clarify whether it backs these demands. Union Home Minister Amit Shah has fired off a list of 10 questions, some of which are, does the Congress support the National Conference's promise of a separate flag for Jammu and Kashmir? Do Rahul Gandhi and the Congress party support the National Conference's decision to restore Article 370 and 35A and thereby push Jammu and Kashmir back into an era of unrest and separatism and terrorism? Does the Congress support promoting separatism again by engaging in dialogue with Pakistan instead of Kashmir's youth? Do the Congress party and Rahul Gandhi support the National Conference's decision to start LOC trade with Pakistan, thereby nurturing terrorism and its ecosystem across the border? Does Congress support reinstating relatives of those involved in terrorism, stone pelting into government jobs, thereby bringing back terrorism, extremism and an era of strike? There are several other questions, 4 other questions to be precise, viewers. Does the Congress want Shankaracharya Hill to be known as Takht-e Suleiman and Hari Hill as Kohe Maran? There are several questions that have been put out by the Bharatiya Janata Party and by the Home Minister in particular. One man, viewers, let me jog your memory back. One man, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, quit Nehru cabinet and went on to oppose Article 370, saying that, quote, एक देश में 2 विधान, 2 प्रधान और 2 निशान नहीं चलेंगे. That means in one country you cannot have 2 constitutions, 2 prime ministers and 2 flags. What happened to Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, viewers? He died under mysterious circumstances on June 23, 1953 in police custody after he was arrested for entering the state of Jammu and Kashmir to stage a protest which was deemed a threat to, quote, public safety, unquote. Who was the Prime Minister of India? The Congress party, Jawaharlal Nehru. Who was Prime Minister of Jammu and Kashmir? Yes, Chief Ministers were then called Prime Ministers or Sadr-e-Riyasat in Kashmir right up till 1965. It was Sheikh Abdullah of the National Conference. Is the same combination of Gandhis and Abdullahs now going to take us back to a past that set the base for separatism in Kashmir? That's the fundamental question, and we have to ask for it tonight, viewers. And I want to bring in Kamru Chaudhary first off the block. Mr. Chaudhary, this is astounding. And let me tell you the hypocrisy here. You are tying up with the National Conference that promises to bring back Article 370 in your own manifesto. For the Lok Sabha elections, you were silent on it. You were silent also on CA, that's a different matter. But Article 370, completely silent. So when you go to canvass for, 338 seats around the country, you sell a different line. When you go to Kashmir, you try to pick at the seams of a dormant separatism. That is shameful.
Yeah, Rahul, first and foremost, the Congress party stand on Article 370 is pretty clear after the Supreme Court judgment.
No, it isn't.
We believe...
Show me in your manifesto for the election where it is mentioned.
Rahul, let me finish my statement, please. Then you can argue on point-by-point basis, sir, please. I am not going to rebut Amit Shah's statement on 10 points each on your show right now that the party will be doing. But at least let me rebut your question first. Factually, in 2019, we had passed a resolution in our CWC, wherein we said clearly the manner in which Article 370 was withdrawn is discriminatory. And the process which followed by Amit Shah and his government was not in tune with the line of the Constitution. That was our official stand. After the Supreme Court judgment, our two senior-most members, Mr. P. Chidambaram and Abhishek Manu Singhvi, on a press conference pretty clearly mentioned this, that after the Supreme Court, the debate on 370 and 35A is pretty much over. But our opposition to the way, the manner in which the Article 370 was removed, that needs to be a debate.
Okay.
First point. Second point, let me come. Rahul, you can come after me after this. Second point, Amit Shah is in charge of the state of Jammu and Kashmir right now. National Conference is a party registered under the Indian Constitution with the Election Commission of India. If the Congress party aligns with National Conference, then what is Amit Shah doing? If he thinks that National Conference is an anti-national party, better
just
submit a repeal. No, wait. Then you cannot link this with the National Conference and say both the parties are international, and you create a narrative because the Haryana, Jharkhand and Maharashtra elections are coming up.
Okay.
That's the only motive.
Okay, Mr. Chaudhary,
Amit Shah.
let's be realistic. Let's be realistic. You say it's a closed chapter. The National Conference spokesperson is here with us. And for him, Mr. Rana, can you please clarify, will the National Conference resile on its position on Article 370? Will you concede that position, or will you say, no, this is an article of faith for us? We will want to bring it back the moment the opportunity presents itself. I can't hear you. I think you're on mute. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
We have already made certain things very clear.
Yes.
Like Mr. Umar Abdullah, he was talking to NDTV the day before yesterday, and in which he has made it clear that that the National Conference is going to pass a resolution in the Assembly after coming to power on 4th of October, that the manner in which the Article 370 was abrogated was not acceptable to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. So I think that our stand is clear.
Yeah.
We are not going to compromise on Article 370, and
They will not compromise. Okay.
Yeah.
I think you've stated your position very clearly. Dr. Ranganathan, what are we supposed to make of this? Congress says it's a dead issue, dead in the water after the Supreme Court. Mr. Zishan Rana says, no way. It's not dead. We are not going to compromise. These are two very varying positions, and I'm expected to say that somehow I'm wrong.
No, because the positions are so at variance, it makes complete sense for them to form an alliance. Fun not intended. No, look, Rahul, for the nth time, Kashmir is a snakes and ladders game. The ladders are provided by Pakistan and the snakes are provided by India. And these snakes right now are writhing in the sand. These vipers, these rattlers, they are writhing in the sand. They don't know what to do. Because their first allegiance is to religion, second to Pakistan, third to China, and fourth to dynasty. Was it not Mr. Farooq Abdullah who said, and I quote, they will remove 370, we will see how they manage to remove 370. Allah would want that we gain independence from India, unquote. This is what their leaders say. And for them to say we will reinstate 370 means that they want to reinstate the most draconian law ever promulgated on the face of this world, that trampled on the human rights of lakhs of Dalits, of Gurkhas, of women, of Sikhs, of refugees. And these are the same people who say we fight for the rights of these very people. How shameless can you be? But then you can't shame the shameless, can you?
You can't shame the shameless. Now, Kamru Chaudhary, the National Conference leader, says we are not resigning on our stand on 370. Kamru Chaudhary, then why are you siding with a political entity that actually is echoing everything that Islamabad echoes? You know, the ladders are being provided by Pakistan, as Dr. Ranganathan. I'm not saying to the National Conference, I'm just saying, viewers, to the narrative, so it can stand on its 2 feet. And the Congress is willingly buying into it.
Rahul, four of us are here on this debate.
No, sir.
Let
One
us
minute.
not-
You talk
Yeah.
about Bharat Jodo, but Article 370 was about Bharat Todo. It's a very. I don't want to reduce this to sort of trivialize this debate by reducing it to some sort of vacuous kind of. I think Bharat Jodo, the slogan was very vacuous. So I don't want to reduce it to the vacuous levels to which Congress reduced the discourse, but. Chalo, I'll take a chapter out of your notebook and say Bharat Todo for votes.
Rahul, the point that I'm going to drive out here now is four of us are here in this debate. Maybe tomorrow nobody will remember what we spoke tonight. Or maybe there will be some clippings that might be doing the rounds. But let us not belittle those people who had brought or who have amalgamated Jammu and Kashmir with the Indian Union during independence. Let us not belittle those leaders, Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel, and all other freedom fighters
Jawaharlal
who
Nehru,
fought.
he succumbed. You can look at the Constituent Assembly debates. He succumbed to this
Rahul,
lie of Article 370 being a bridge. No.
Rahul,
Actually,
Rahul,
he fomented the situation for the Kashmiris to think of themselves as a separate grouping in this country. It didn't integrate them. Dr. Ranganathan is raising his hand.
No, let me
Rahul,
finish.
this is the problem
He
with-
can
this is
quote
the problem.
Ranganathan ji. एक मिनट मेरे को खत्म करने दो, please. Let me finish
please
first.
allow me.
I'll just take 10, 20 seconds, then you can come with your.
Okay, 20
ChatGPT.
seconds. 20 seconds.
Yeah. The basic point out here is that because of Jawaharlal Nehru, when 5 plebiscites were happening in India, even like the Barak Valley region or the Junagadh region or the Hyderabad or the Kashmir region, it was only because of Jawaharlal Nehru that all these 5 regions
please. Nehru took this matter. I'm talking about Kashmir, sir. Nehru took this matter to the United Nations Security Council, where everyone told him, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Today we have a situation where POK is sitting in the lap of Pakistan and we can't get it back. Dr. Ranganathan wants to come in. Okay, you made your point, sir. Kamru Sahab, you said Nehru was a great integrationist. No, I don't think so. There is a debate on that. Yes, doctor.
Nehru is the reason for why we have this Kashmir issue. Let me give you a couple of points, that's it. The instrument of accession signed between the Maharaja of Kashmir and India in October 1947 is identical, Rahul, to what many rulers of other princely states also signed, with all these states later merging completely with India. After all, the choice given to 600 odd principalities in 1947 was to join either India or Pakistan. They could not become independent. Kashmiris are not special. They are just like the rest of us. And it is a fact that Hyderabad could so easily have been what Kashmir is today. And fools would be writing column yards on its struggle, but for one man, Sardar Patel, who incidentally was not even consulted on Article 370.
Exactly.
It was deemed temporary in nature. Jawaharlal roega. He told V. Shankar later. Jawahar did not cry, but billion Indians did. And finally, 30 seconds. Nehru had also asked Sheikh Abdullah to approach Dr. Ambedkar for the drafting of Article 370. The Sheikh approached Ambedkar, and this is what, according to Professor Madhok, Dr. Ambedkar told the Sheikh, quote, you want India to defend Kashmir, feed its people, give Kashmiris equal rights over India, but you want to deny India and Indians all rights in Kashmir. I am the law minister of India. I cannot be a party to such betrayal of national interest, unquote. History पढ़ लिया करो यार.
Now, I just want to say, we are talking about history. 1972 viewers. 1972, our Jawans secure us 90,000 prisoners of war, viewers. And a Congress Prime Minister doesn't bargain effectively enough. A conversation with Mr. Bhutto, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, ends up in us returning those POWs for nothing. Viewers, we could have got POK back, we could have got anything back, we could have got Lahore back, viewers. Can you imagine that? And now, the Congress wants to ally with a party that wants 2 prime ministers, 2 flags and 2 constitutions. You think about it, viewers. You're going to go out there and vote. You think about it now. And then don't blame anyone else but for yourselves when 10 years down the line, you have vociferous tendencies taking root in this country. Then don't come crying. I'll take a short break, viewers. The Right Stand coming up.
सारी रिक्वायरमेंट रहती है, जिन रिक्वायरमेंट को पूरा करने के लिए भारत ने हो सका उतना एक मानवीय दृष्टिकोण को केंद्र में रखते हुए पूरा करने का प्रयास किया है। और मैं आपको विश्वास दिलाता हूं कि मानवीय दृष्टिकोण से भी जिस प्रकार की मदद की आवश्यकता होगी, भारत हमेशा हमेशा आपके साथ खड़ा रहेगा और 2 कदम आगे चलेगा। एक्सेलेंसी, हमने जो दूसरा मार्ग चुना, वो दूसरा मार्ग है युद्ध से दूर रहने का। हम बहुत ही कन्विक्शन के साथ युद्ध से दूर रहे हैं, लेकिन इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि हम तटस्थ थे, हम न्यूट्रल नहीं थे। हम पहले दिन से ही पक्षकार रहे हैं और हमारा पक्ष है शांति का। हम बुद्ध की धरती से आते हैं, जहां युद्ध को कोई स्थान नहीं होता है। हम महात्मा गांधी की धरती से आते हैं, जिसने पूरे विश्व को शांति का संदेश दिया है। एक्सेलेंसी, मैं आज जब यूक्रेन आया हूं, तब मैं 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की भावना को लेकर के आया हूं। और 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की भावना मानवता से प्रेरित है। और मैं आज यूक्रेन की धरती पर शांति का संदेश लेकर के आया। एक्सेलेंसी, यहां से पहले मैंने ग्लोबल साउथ की कॉन्फ्रेंस की, करीब 120 देश के लोग थे। मैं उनकी तरफ से भी शांति का संदेश लेकर के आया। एक्सेलेंसी, आप भली भांति जानते हैं, यूक्रेन के लोग भी भली भांति जानते हैं कि शांति के हर प्रयास में भारत का सक्रिय योगदान रहा है। और आप भली भांति जानते हैं कि हमारा अप्रोच पीपल सेंट्रिक रहा है। और मैं आपको भी और पूरे विश्व समुदाय को विश्वास दिलाना चाहता हूं, और वो भारत का कमिटमेंट है। और हम स्पष्ट मानते हैं कि संप्रभुता और क्षेत्रीय अखंडता का सम्मान हमारे लिए सर्वोपरि है। हम उसका समर्थन करते हैं। कुछ समय पहले समरकंद में जब राष्ट्रपति पुतिन से मैं मिला था, तब मीडिया के सामने आंख से आंख मिला करके मैंने उनको कहा था कि ये युद्ध का समय नहीं है। मैं पिछले दिनों रशिया के मुलाकात के लिए गया था। वहां भी मैंने साफ शब्दों में अपनी बात कही है कि किसी भी समस्या का समाधान रणभूमि में कभी भी नहीं होता है। समाधान का रास्ता बातचीत से ही निकलता है, डायलॉग से निकलता है, डिप्लोमेसी से निकलता है। और हमने बिना समय गंवाए उस दिशा में आगे बढ़ना चाहिए। दोनों पक्षों को साथ